Hi guys, welcome back to Anita Crochets. My name is Anita. Today we are going to be making this bow and slit mini skirt. I got the inspiration from interest and I thought I could just crochet this and kind of like transform my previous little mini skirt into this and just give it, a little touch up to be more playful, right? So I'm going to be taking you through how to work the bow, right? Because if you already watched my previous tutorial on the little slitted mini skirt, which is this one, yeah, you already know what to do. But if you didn't, then I'm just going to add the clips for this skirt onto this tutorial so that you don't have to go back and scroll into my videos to find the skirt. So the first clips are going to be for this skirt. Then later on, we shall learn how to attach the bow onto the slit of the skirt and then get us started. Also, I worked with a 6mm hook. Now, the written pattern for this skirt is going to be on my online shops. Also, the tutorial and written pattern for the top in this video is already on my channel and the written pattern on my online shops, right? So let's get into the tutorial. I am working with chunky yarn. It is Robin 100% acrylic and this is 3-ply. Guys, sometimes where you make the mistake and have results that don't match mine is because you're probably working with a different size of yarn. And then you find that maybe you are working with size 3 yarn and the result is slightly smaller because the size of yarn also matters. This is size 4 yarn. It is chunky. It is 3-ply, all right? And it is 100% acrylic. Now, once we know that we have the right size of yarn that we are both working with, if we don't have, then you have to follow exactly what I'm going to explain in the tutorial so that we make sure that we have the same results even when we are working with different yarn sizes. Now, to start off, you are going to take your waist measurements, your high waist measurements, all right? And your foundation chains should be equivalent to your high waist measurements. In this sense, I mean that when you work your foundation chains, do not stretch the cord. Do not stretch the cord, but rather work foundation chains that match your high waist measurements. For example, if your high waist is 28 or 30, make sure that when you work your foundation chains and put the cord onto your tape measure, it meets 30 inches, all right? Now, once you have a cord that can go around your waist without being stretched, because the reason as to why some of you end up with work that is slightly tight is because you probably stretched out your cord to meet those measurements and you forgot that when the skirt is going to be passed over your arms and your shoulders, it needs more expansion, all right? So for me, I work a cord that is not stretched, but rather it is equivalent to my waist measurement so that when I stretch it and I'm passing it over my shoulders, that's when the stretch comes in. And then that stretch is enough room to go through my shoulders and now go down and still snatch my waist, okay? So once you have the chains, the foundation chains that are equivalent to the measurements I have provided, you are now going to get into the first chain stitch the first chain stitch that started the cord and work a slip stitch. Now here, you need to make sure that you do not turn your cord, okay? Do not turn your cord or twist it in any way. Make sure that it is flat and now you work a slip stitch into the very first chain stitch, all right? And now once we have a chain stitch, a ring from our cord, right, just like this. Now to start our very first row, we are going to chain 2. And into this very first chain stitch, we are going to work 1/2 double crochet, right? And now we are going to work 1/2 double crochet into every chain stitch all the way around until you come to the end of your row. Now the number of half double crochets that you should have should be equivalent to the number of foundation chains that you worked. So work your 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around, right, until you come to the end of your row. And that's where I'm going to meet you guys and then show you how to end your row or close your row. Then we can get on to the next row. So let me meet you guys here. And here we are. I have worked, all my half double crochets as I should. And since I'm at the end of the row, I'm going to get my hook and insert it into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the row and work a slip stitch. Now remember that those 2 chains are just turning chains and they're not a stitch. I don't count them as a stitch. If you want to, count them, but I don't count them as a stitch. So once again, you're going to chain 2, turn your work, and into the very first stitch, you're going to work 1/2 double crochet. And then you will work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch, all the way around, just like we did previously, right? Work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around until you come to the end of your row, and that's where I'm going to meet you. Then still show you how to end your row so that you have mastered this, and then I'll explain something before we go forward with the tutorial. Now here I am at the end of my row, so I'm going to get into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the row, and I'll work a slip stitch just like that. So this is how my work looks like, and for the next row it's not going to be any different. It is a chain 2, turn your work. Remember to turn your work every time, or else your seam line will be diagonal. So to keep the seam line straight and have it at the center of our back and it is straight, you need to remember that when working in rounds, you turn your work. So yes, chain 2, turn your work, work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around, right, until you come to the end of your tutorial, and work a slip stitch into the very first stitch. So you do this repeatedly for the next 3 rows so that we have a total of 6 rows. All right, so let me meet you guys once you have 6 rows, and then I'll meet you there and show you what to do. So here we are. I have my 6 rows complete. My work looks small. I am working this for size small. Also, the stitch I am working with gives us a great thickness and a good stretch, right? The half double crochet, if you realize, it gives us that good stretch and then a great thickness. Unlike the double crochet kind of gives off work that is kind of light, if you realize. So what's going to happen here, as you can see, I have marked where I need to have my increments for the hip area. So what happens is you count all the number of stitches you have on your previous row. For example, I have 80, and you divide 80 by 4, right? So when you divide 80 by 4, you get 20. So from here up to there is 20 stitches, so I marked that. And then from here towards the left is 20 stitches as well, and I marked that. Why is I want my seam line where I have been ending my rows to be at the center of my back. I don't want it on the sides, not on the front, not anywhere, but I want it at the back, at the center of my back. That's why I'm counting from where I ended my row towards the left, and again from where I ended my row towards the right. Now that's what you do. If you have like 120 stitches, get 120, divide it by 4. If the number is not divisible by 4, for example, you have 90 stitches, dividing by 4, you get something like 20 point or 20 something point. Now that point is that extra stitch. For example, if you got 20.5, that means you're going to mark the 21st stitch. If you got 23.2 or I don't know, it should be 0.5 or something. Now that means you're going to mark the 24th, not the 23rd stitch. So you count from where you ended your row and count towards the left and mark that stitch, and then count from where you ended your row, count towards the right and mark that stitch. Okay, now to get started with this next row is we're going to chain to turn our work and work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch until we get to the marked stitch. Guys, my speech is trying to catch up with my actions, so if you feel like I am moving fast and my speech is slow, I'm going to catch up definitely. And here it is. I have worked my half double crochets until the marked stitch. Now what's going to happen with the marked stitch is I'm going to take out my stitch markers and put them aside. Into that marked stitch, I'm going to work 2 half double crochets all in the very same stitch. Now what happens with having bumpy, puffy forming forms, I don't know even how to call them, but in the comment someone said that, oh, after you work your 2 half double crochets into what was the marked stitch, you're going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around until you get to the marked stitch on the other end, right there. That's why I'm going to meet you there and show you what to do. Now, what happens is, what makes you get those bumpy forming? Sometimes it's either you worked too many stitches into the very same stitch for your increase, or you overworked so many rows of an increase before you had a series of no increments in between. We are going to get into that while we get into the tutorial. Now, when you get into the marked stitch on the other side, still you're going to do the very same thing. Take out your stitch marker and work 2 half double crochets all into that very same stitch. And then after that, you're going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch until you come to the end of your row. And once at the end of your row, you are going to work a slip stitch into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the previous row. Yes, I'm still explaining why you get those, you know, I don't know, not great formings on your hip area. When you work so many rows of an increase, before you have a row of no increase, in between those rows of an increase, you find that you're going to get that on your hip area, right? Now, just like you look at our hips, our body kind of, you know, forms gradually. Like from the waist, it's a gradual increase, and then you find that we get wider around the hip area. It's not like from the waist someone just goes woof, and then they have huge hips, like just from the waist. No, it's kind of gradual. Yes, I know some people have quite huge hips, yes, but still, the forming is kind of gradual. That's how also your increase for your skirts around the hip area should be. Okay. Now for this next row, chain 2, you will turn your work, but first before that, I usually just, to mark where my hip area is going to be after I've worked 1 row of an increase, I'll just get into the 2 double crochets I worked. I don't have to count again, again divide, you know, no. I just get into those 2 double crochets just like you can see right here, those 2 right there, I marked in between them. So it is easier like that to, you know, mark where exactly your your next increase is going to go, right? So for the next row still, we are going to have an increase around the hip area. So what we will do is we shall chain 2, turn our work 1 half double crochet into every stitch until the marked stitch once again. So what we are doing is exactly what we did previously, no difference at all. But now here, as you can see, when I get to the marked stitch, I am going to work 2 half double crochets into that very same stitch, which is the marked stitch, right? I'll take out the stitch marker because I'm not going to be working an increase on the next row. So I'll take it out. And now after this, I'm going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around until I get to the marked stitch on the other end, right? And that's where I'm going to meet you guys. Guys, I'm trying to explain so many things all in this same tutorial because as I said, my intention was not to make a skirt tutorial, but my intention is to clearly explain everything as it should so that it helps you on your next skirt projects. Now, when you get to the marked stitch on the other end, you're going to do the very same thing. Take out your stitch marker and work 2 half double crochets all in that very same stitch. Once you have your 2 half double crochets in there, you're now going to continue with 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way until the end of the row, and then work a slip stitch into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the row, right? So this means we have 2 rows of an increase. Now with my previous tutorials, I have been explaining this thing several times, and I still get comments of people asking, what do you mean by 2 rows of an increase, and what do you mean by normal rows? Once again, we have had 2 rows of an increase. This means that in these 2 rows, we have managed to work an increase on both our left and right hip, like you have seen, okay? Because I have been marking where my left hip has to go and where my right hip has to go. And those 2 rows in which I have worked an increase for the left and right hip, those are the ones I call rows of an increase, right? Because they had an increment in there. Now, what I call a normal row is a row I worked without working any increments whatsoever. So that means on this row, I only worked 1 stitch into every stitch until the end of the row. I hope this is now clear. Now, like you can see that we are starting to get some little bit of increase. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like a visible increase, because when you put it on, it's going to snatch and give the form, right? And if you want to increase until you see a visible increase, you may go overhead, and sometimes you're working with a stitch that actually gives an increase already. The half double crochet stitch gives an increase, like it's easy to expand, yeah? So now for this row, we do not intend to work any increases whatsoever. So we chain 2, turn our work, and work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around, until we come to the end of our row and work a slip stitch into the chain 2 that started the row. Now this is why I call it the normal row. Like, it is so normal, no change of stitches, no whatsoever. That's why I call it the normal row. So if I continue to use rows of an increase and normal row, please understand that this is where it comes from, right? Now, my purpose for working a normal row, it is very good that once you work a few rows of an increase, work a normal row in between to dilute the expansion. You cannot have conch juice. Like, you can I'm trying to find the most basic language to use so that we clearly understand this expanding thing, this expansion thing, or this increment thing around our hip area. So yes, you cannot have conch juice and increase all the way through, or else you're going to have bumpy formings on, the side of your hips. So you need to dilute the increments. So to dilute the increments, you are going to work a row or 2 rows of just normal stitches, no increase whatsoever. Now, like you can see, I have worked my normal row, and now I am looking for my stitch that I'm going to mark for my left hip. So usually for me, I just look through and see which stitch corresponds to the previous increase, and I mark that. Which stitch corresponds to the previous increase, even on the left side, and then I mark that. But if you want to be as accurate, my eyes know where to put what. So if you want to be as accurate, please count your work once again, count your stitches, divide the number by 4, and count from where we previously ended our row, count to the left and mark that number of stitches. And also, once again, from where we ended our row towards the right, you count and mark those number of stitches. Now, once you have that, yes, we are now going to get back to increasing once again. So we chain 2, turn our work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way until the marked stitch, right? Until the marked stitch. Yes, so this is what I needed to explain to you guys. The best way to, oh God, I don't know which word to use, but yes, the best way is you need to have a few rows of an increase and then a row or 2 without an increase whatsoever. A row or 2. Now here, like you can see, I have worked my 2 rows of an increase and now normal row, and then now we are back to increasing once again, because I need to get this thing wider and wider until I feel like it can stretch out to meet my hip area, my hip measurements. So once you get to your marked stitch, you're going to work 2 half double crochets all into this very same stitch. And then, take out your stitch marker and just place it into the 2 half double crochets in between the 2 half double crochets, because even the next row is going to be of an increase. So I just get it and place it in between the 2 half double crochets I just worked, so that it is easier for me. I don't have to count again and then divide. Yes, sometimes crochet really has some good mathematics. You need to have, your brain ready to deal with that. And now you're going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around until you get to the marked stitch on the other side, and that's where I'm going to meet you guys, then show you what to do right there. So let me meet you guys there. Now here we are. I'm going to take out my stitch marker, and then I'm going to work 2 half double crochets into this very same stitch. And I'll get my stitch marker and put it right in between those 2 half double crochets, because I'm also going to have an increase for the next row, right? And then I'm going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way until the end of the row, and I'll work a slip stitch into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the row. So I'll meet you at the end of your row and show you what to do. So we are here. This is how my work looks like, and we are starting to see a visible kind of stretch. Right here, as you can see, we are going to just work our 2 chains and work 2 half double crochets into the marked stitches. Then the rest of the stitches are going to have 1 half double crochet into them, and then you work a slip stitch. Now, after you have this row of an increment, you are now just going to work a normal row. Now, the normal row means that you are going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around until the end of your row. Now, this means we are having 2 rows of an increase and then 1 normal row after. So this means you are going to chain 2 and work 1 half double crochet into every stitch until right here, the marked stitch. In there, you work 2 half double crochets, then continue with 1 half double crochet into the next marked stitch is 2 half double crochets, and then 1 half double crochet until the end of the row. Now that means we are going to have our second row of an increase. Now after that, you're just going to work 1 half double crochet into every stitch until the end of your row, and then have 1 row of an increase. Sorry, 1 normal row, no increase whatsoever, right? After that, you have to have 2 rows of an increase, whereby you have an increase on your left and right hip, and for 2 rows, right? And after those 2 rows of an increase, you have 1 normal row, no increase whatsoever. And, you do this repeatedly until you have a project that can stretch out to meet your hip area. It needs to be in position to stretch out to meet your hip area. Now, why do we get to stretch it out when we get to the hip area? Because we want it to snatch. When you make your hip area and make sure that it actually just is equivalent to your hip measurements, then crochet kind of stretches out over time when you keep putting on something, when you keep putting it on and all that. The stitches, I think, loosen out just slightly, so you'll find that it is no longer snatching. Now, this is why we do not make something that is equivalent to your hip area, but rather we make an increase until it can stretch out to meet your hip measurements. I hope now I am very clear. Now, once you have that, you have worked your increments, worked two rows of an increase followed by 1 normal row. Until you have that, you are now going to chain 2, turn your work, and now work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way around until the end of your row. And this is what you repeat and repeat, because now we no longer need increments, but rather we need length. All right, so you work this. Since I'm working something with a slit, I'm going to work this until the length I feel comfortable to have my slit at, right? So once you have your increments, work this until you have the length that we need, where you feel comfortable your slit needs to start from. That's where I'm going to meet you guys and show you what to do. I'll tell you the number of rows I have worked before that, then we see how to work our slit. So guys, here is my work, right? I have around 26 rows from my waist area going down, right? So yes, that's what I have, and that's the length I am confident my skirt needs to have, because I intend to have something little, like, you know, a little mini skirt. That's why it's kind of skimpy. Yes, but once you have the length that you need for your project, before you now start working the slit area, we are now going to cut our yarn from where we ended, because we are no longer going to start from that point. We are now going to cut our yarn. Now once you cut your yarn, you're just going to find a point where you feel you need your slit. Some of you may want the slit in front, at the center of the front. I want it on the sides, that's why I put it a few stitches from the center of my front, right? That's why I put it right there. So you're just going to find that point, and once you find it, you mark it. And now we are going to get our hook and insert our, hook into that stitch, and we are going to chain 2 and then work 1/2 double crochet into that very same stitch right there. Then we shall work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around. Right, work your 1/2 double crochet into every stitch. Now the stitch where your slit has to be, it should be a couple of stitches away from the stitch that had your hip area, right? So that it is centered at the center of your right or left leg, right? That's the intention. And there is no mathematics to it. You just have to be artistic and find that stitch and just mark that, right? Also, if you feel it's not perfectly placed, you still can turn your skirt around until the slit is like placed where you want it to be placed. So there is no mathematics or science there. Yeah, just do that. Now here we are going to work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around until the marked stitch. So we work our last 1/2 double crochet in there in the marked stitch, right? So let me let you guys do that, then meet you on the next row. Now once you have come to the end of your row and you have your 1/2 double crochet into the very first stitch, which was the marked stitch for our slit, like you can see, this is how it should look like. Now to create a slit is not working a slip stitch at the end of the row, because we need to keep that row open. Now once we have that, we are going to chain 2 and turn our work, and here we are going to work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around until the very last stitch, which was the first stitch that started the previous row. So you're just going to work 1/2 double crochet into every stitch until the end of the row, right? So this is how you work a slit. This is how you keep your slit open. Yeah, because the previous rows we have been working a slip stitch at the end of the row to close up the row, but now we don't need it to be closed. So we just work our stitches until the end of the row. And this is what you are going to do repeatedly. I kept checking because, you know, I'm still learning to work with this tripod, so I keep checking whether I'm recording or not. Now, yes, you work your 1/2 double crochet into every stitch all the way around until the end of the row right there. And you do this again for the next row and again for the next row until you have the length that you need for your skirt. And there you have your skirt. I'm just going to get back and show you how to work your waistband. Then we shall call this the end of the tutorial. And we are here at the end of our row, right? I will cut my yarn and, you know, secure my end just like that. Now I'm going to move on to my waistband and see how we can work this waistband. Now to work our waistband is we're going to get our hook and insert it into the very first chain stitch. We are working on the opposite side of our foundation chain, so we insert our hook into the very first chain stitch and pull through our loop, then chain 5. I think 5, yeah. Chain 5. Now the more chain stitches you work, the longer or wider your band is going to be. I don't look for a really, you know, exaggerated band. I just want something small for my waistline. So I chain 5, and into the second chain stitch from the hook I'm going to work 1 single crochet, and I'll continue to work one single crochet into every stitch all the way down until I have a total of 4 single crochets. Now I'm going to get into the next stitch on the opposite side of my foundation chains, and in there, right now, just look closely. When you see, we'll insert my hook into that next stitch on the foundation chains, on the opposite side of my foundation chains. I'll insert my hook in there and work a slip stitch. Now this slip stitch is to attach the chains that we just worked and the single crochets we just worked onto the waistline of our skirt, right? Then I'll get into the next stitch as well and work a slip stitch, right? Then I'm going to turn my work. This is the easiest way to have a band onto a waistline without having to just work the band separately and then hand sew it onto the waistline. I feel like that is double work. Now, once you have turned your work, you're going to get into the first single crochet stitch along the single crochets we just worked for our band and work a single crochet in there. Then you're going to work one single crochet into every stitch until the end of the row, and you should have a total of 4 single crochets. If you have more than that, then you probably worked a stitch into the slip stitch and thought it's also a single crochet stitch. So you should be very careful. That's why most of you lose it when working these kind of bands, right? So you work your way up until the end of your row and should have 4 single crochets. Now once you have that, you are now going to chain 1, turn your work, right? And now you are going to work going down. So we work 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way down, and you should have a total of 4 single crochets, right? If this kind of confuses you, you're going to have to work this band separately and then hand sew it along your waistline, right? But if you really are eager to learn, just look closely at what I'm doing and learn something. Now, what happens here is we get into the next stitch along the opposite side of our foundation chains and work a slip stitch. Then once again, work a slip stitch into the next stitch that's on the opposite side of our foundation chains. Now you will turn your work like that. And now we are now going to work into the very first single crochet. Right there, we work a single crochet into it and then continue working 1 single crochet into every stitch all the way up. I voice my tutorials usually in the morning, but sometimes I get birds, making noise in the background. I just hope you guys can hear me, and I don't intend to have this noise, yeah. But yes, this is what you do. Once you get up, you chain 1, turn your work, work your single crochets all the way down, work a slip stitch into the next stitch, and again work another slip stitch, then turn your work your single crochets going up, and that's what you do all the way around for every stitch all the way around until the end of your row. And I'm going to meet you at the end of your row to just show you how to connect the 2 ends together. Okay, yes, so this is how my work looks like. You can see my band really formed out well. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to work a few single crochets to close up my end of the band, or you can just get your yarn needle and hand stitch that. Now to work the bow, yes. To work the bow, we are going to get our yarn, should be a different color, and we are going to chain 5, right? We are going to make a slip knot and chain 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So now we are going to yarn over and get into the 3rd chain stitch from the hook, and in there we are going to work 4 double crochets all in this very same stitch. So the last 2 chains that make 5 chains are just our turning chains, they're not a stitch. So into that stitch, the 3rd stitch from the hook, we are going to work 4 double crochets all in that very same stitch, right? And then now moving on to the next chain stitch, still I'm going to work 4 double crochets into that very same stitch, and that's what I'm going to do also for the very last chain stitch that I have, okay? which was the first one. Also in there, I'm going to work 4 double crochets all in that very same stitch. So let me meet you once you have all your stitches, because there should be 12 of them. Now here we are, we have 12 stitches. I just keep writing this down so it helps me when I am taking notes for my written pattern. Now I'm going to chain 2 and turn my work. Into the very first stitch, I'm going to work 2 double crochets all in that very same stitch, just like that. And then I'm going to now work 2 double crochets also in the next stitch, and I'm going to continue working 2 double crochets into every stitch all the way around until the end of the row. You should have a total of 24 stitches, so I'm going to let you guys go all the way around, and I'll come back at the end of the row to show you what to do. Here we are, this is how it looks like. Yeah, now to work the next row, I'm still going to chain 2 and turn my work. These 2 chains don't act as a stitch, they're just our turning chains. So into the very first stitch, I'm going to work 2 double crochets all in that very same stitch. And then I'll get into the next stitch as well and work 2 double crochets. So I'm going to continue working 2 double crochets into every stitch all the way around until I come to the end of my row, and I should have a total of 48 stitches, right? So let me meet you at the end of your row and show you what to do next. So this is how my work looks like. Yeah. Now I'm going to be working my last row of this round, and I'll chain 2, turn my work into the very first stitch. I'm going to work 2 double crochets all in that very same stitch. Then I will work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, right, just like that. Then work 2 double crochets into the next stitch. So we go in with the second double crochet, and then 1 double crochet into the next stitch right there. So we work 1, 2 double crochets into the next stitch, so that is 1, and then we go in with the second one into that very same stitch. So that's what you're going to do. Just work 2 double crochets into this stitch, and then the next one you work 1 double crochet, then the next one 2 double crochets, then the next one 1 double crochet, until you go all the way around at the end of your row, and that's where I'm going to meet you and then show you what to do. So once you have your whole entire round complete, and this is how your work should look like, you're going to count 15 stitches from where you stopped and get your stitch marker. I'm just making sure it is 15 of them. So get your stitch marker and mark the 15th stitch from your very last stitch that you worked. So from where I stopped, once I have marked this stitch, I'm going to get from where I stopped and chain 2, turn my work, right? And I'm going to work 1 double crochet into every stitch until I have 2 stitches left to get to the marked stitch. Work this until you have 2 stitches left to get to the marked stitch, right? So I'm going to meet you there, then show you what to do. Just work 1 double crochet into every stitch for the next 12 stitches, then I'll meet you there. Here we are. As you can see, I have 2 stitches left to get to my marked stitch, so I'm going to work 3 double crochets together into those last 3 stitches. That means that 2 stitches and into the marked stitch, you work 3 double crochets together. Now after that, you're going to chain 2 and turn your work. You're going to skip the first stitch and get into the second stitch, and the next stitch work 2 double crochets together, right? Then after this, we're just going to work 1 double crochet into every stitch until you come to the end of the row, right? So just work this until right there. At the end of my row, this is how my work looks like so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain to turn my work just like that, and I'm going to work 1 double crochet into every stitch until I have 3 stitches left to end my row, right? So work this until you have 3 stitches left to end your row. And I'm going to meet you guys there, then show you how to end your row and start the next row. Then I'll let you guys just finish off your piece. Now once you have 3 stitches left to end your row, what you do is you get into those very last 3 stitches, and in there you're going to work 3 double crochets together just like that. Then you will chain to turn your work, and you're going to skip the very first stitch, get into the second and third stitch and work 2 double crochets together. So once you have that, you're now going to work 1 double crochet into every stitch until the end of your row, right? Now this is what you're just going to keep doing. You are going to have to chain to turn your work 1 double crochet into every stitch until you have 3 stitches left to end your row, then work 3 double crochets together into the last 3 stitches, and then chain to turn your work, skip the first stitch, work 2 double crochets together into the next 2 stitches, then work 1 double crochet into every stitch until the end of the row. This is what you will repeat until you have 1 stitch on your row. So the last row should be a 3 double crochets together, giving you 1 stitch, right? Now when you have your 3 double crochets together on your last row, we are now going to be working along this edge. The edge right there up to all the way to the foundation chains that we worked right there. So here what we do is we chain 1, and into that very same, the first stitch, we are going to work a single crochet, and then we shall work 2 single crochets into every double crochet post. Just work 2 single crochets into every double crochet post until you go all the way to the second chain stitch of the 3 foundation chains in which we worked our first double crochets, right? So just work it all the way until you are right there at the center, right there. So here we are, and once we are here, what we are going to do is we are going to cut our yarn at a length, and once we cut our yarn, we are now going to secure our end, because we are now going to use this yarn end for hand sewing our piece onto the slit of our skirt, right? So you secure your end like that, and now we are going to get our skirt, and I will show you how to get this onto the skirt now. So now what's going to now happen is something I cannot really help you, but you need to help yourself. At this point, because I also just keep trying to help myself, the folding is really tricky, kind of tricky. But what happens is just, fold it in a way that gives you 3 folds, right? 3 folds. So just keep doing that and make sure that your folds are kind of like proportional, okay? Like the width between both of them is sort of professional, just like you can see, right? So there is no science, there is no mathematics, but just make sure where we started our decrease right here is folded in a way that it does not appear. Because if we keep it flat like this, it will appear, it will show. My daughter is making background noise, but I'll make sure it's on the low. So yes, just make sure you fold it like that, and once you feel you are confident with your folds, you're now going to carry your skirt onto your desk and just carry it carefully and place it onto your skirt. Also get your yarn end and place your yarn needle into it so that we can now start hand sewing this onto our skirt. Now like you can see, if you have pins, just pin your folds down. So you need to make sure that this tip makes it to the bottom of your slit right there. Just make sure that's where it is. And then If you have a longer slit, that's where the tricky part will be, because I had to measure the length of my slit before working this ribbon. So if you have a longer slit, you may need to work your decreases from more than 15 stitches, because we marked 15 stitches before we started working our decreases. So if your slit is longer, then you may go and mark maybe like the 21st stitch and start decreasing all the way down, so it gives you a longer piece to match the length of your slit, right? So we place it in this manner, and now we are going to work along the edge of the slit and along the edge of our bow, right? So allow me just place my tripod where it allows me to stitch this together. So when hand sewing, you need to make sure that you pass your needle slightly into the bow so that our folds are also stitched into place so that they don't come out. And also while you're doing that, you need to make sure that you're also hand sewing the edge onto the edge, right? And I don't know what tricks I can share about hand sewing, honestly, but just don't leave, be neat, just be neat, right? And yes, at this point, there is no math or science. It's just about hand sewing carefully. And, I started from right there, like you can see, and then went all the way down. So when you see me pass my needle up here, it's because I want to secure the folds so they don't come out, right? And while I secure the edge as well. And that's what you are going to do. Just be careful with this until you are successful with it. And what will happen is I'm going to meet you at the end when you have this complete, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now, like you can see, I have finished hand sewing. I have hand sewn them in a way that they don't come out, but still the folds, remain in an artistic manner, like they can open up and close up, but they don't come out. And that's what you should do. Now, at this point, once you have this complete, you're going to follow exactly what we have done. Make your second piece, and this is going to be folded onto this side, right? So you also do the same. Just try to make sure that the folds match the folds on this side, and just take your time folding it to match what you folded on the other side exactly, so that you have something successfully made that really looks like it's other, right? Like that. So once you fold it, you'll pin it down and just hand sew exactly what we did. So I'm just going to get back to show you how to place our yellow piece in between this, what has become a bow. Then we can end our tutorial. So we are now going to get our yellow yarn, or the color of your skirt. And here we are going to make a slip knot and chain 5, right? So once you have all 5 chains, this is just for the piece that is going to run in between our bow. So I'll chain 5, and into the second chain stitch from the hook, I'm going to work a half double crochet. And then I'll continue working 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way until I come to the end of my row, just like that. Then once I have that, I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and I'll work 1 half double crochet into every stitch until I come to the end of my row. Oh, sorry, I worked my first half double crochet into the second chain stitch from the hook. So I end up with 3 half double crochets, right? So yes, chain 2, turn your work 1 half double crochet into every stitch all the way until the end of the row. And I'm just going to do this for a couple of rows, probably 4. And I'll cut my yarn at some length because I need to use the yarn end to hand sew it onto the piece, right? So once I have my 4 rows, let me just work one more extra row so that I have just enough length for this. And now once I have all 4 rows, sorry, all 5 rows, I'm now going to, yes, cut my yarn and put my yarn needle, get my yarn in and place it into the eyelet of my yarn needle. Then I will get to hand sewing it onto the piece. So let me just show you how to place it on so you can get what I'm talking about. So this is going to go right there. And I'm going to fold it so that this other end goes through to the last row of the skirt before we worked our slip stitch, our slit. And then this other end is going to be hand sewed onto the front, but still the same row, the last row before our slit, right? So make sure it's on that row right there, the row that came before the slit right there. Also, same thing applies down here. Make sure it's on that very row that, you know. So when hand sewing, you will have to get your yarn needle and pass it through all the 3 layers and make sure that you're hand sewing both ends onto the skirt, right? So I'm just going to go through this at rocket speed so that we come to the end of our tutorial. But clearly that is how you get your bow skirt with a slit. And I hope you learned something. This was just a transformation of my previous skirt. So I hope you learned something, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in my next tutorial. I love you so much. Thanks for the support and goodbye. Now this is how it looks like. I'll show you my inside. That's how it is, and it is, you know, I'm just going to make sure I cut off my yarn ends and weave them in, but that's how it looks like. Thank you so much for watching and goodbye.